make it there and can make it back.
Salutations and shit, folks. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite travel podcast, Travel and Shit, where I, your host, dcarrie, have an experiential conversation about the nuanced ways that travel intersects with regular life. Every once in a while, I will have a completely separate conversation with myself in my head in the middle of a conversation that I'm actually saying out loud. And that was one of those moments where I was talking out loud and then having another conversation in my head. The two weren't the same. But welcome back. I'm happy to
Thank
have
you.
you here. And I'm also happy to have another beautiful face with me. Some of you may recognize this face. And so I would like to happily and warmly reintroduce my guest for today. Jasmine, please introduce yourself again.
Hi, everyone. It's Jasmine Noir, dancer, choreographer, dance educator, now a pilot.
All right, yes.
Yes.
Congrats.
I have now taken on the term dance educator / dance aviator.
Okay. Okay. So we had you on, oh my God, at this point, it's a few years ago, and we talked
Before the
about
pandemic.
dance as your passport. So, as a little reintroduction, you have been able to travel the world as a dancer with different gigs and different opportunities. What has changed? What has updated? And what is your status with traveling as a dancer, but traveling now as a dance educator? Like, what does your life look like? And is it the same? But like, without repeating the last episode, like, what was that? Where are you now?
Okay, so in 2019, I was dancing with different brands and different brands, different institutions as a dancer.
Now, what does
But
that look like for
well,
people that aren't familiar with what that, like the world of professional dance, like
right.
what'll that look
Well,
like? Because a
there's
lot of people
different.
will think of like, I had a guest like a Mandy where she danced with like Beyonce, right? You
Right.
dance in videos, you dance at performances, you dance at Super Bowls, but there is so much more to what professional dancing actually
Yes.
entails.
And
So please.
Amandy, yeah, kudos to Amandy. She's amazing. She's awesome. That's an OG, a beautiful dancer. So Amandy's world and my world is a little different. And it's so funny because when Amanda and I saw each other, she was giving me props and I was giving her props, which just goes to show you how big the dance world really is.
Yeah.
And it's big enough for everybody to make it. But long story short, actually, I just see Amandy this past summer. Long story short, so the difference is Amandy is a commercial dancer. She's signed dancer, so she dances with a lot of artists. Those artists travel, they go on tour. She dances with the artists. For me, I went more as scholarships and solos and auditioning for different companies. Like when I danced in China, it was for a company in China. When I danced in London, it was for an institution in London where I was on a talent scholarship. So it's very different. I have danced
Mhm.
for artists as well, but my traveling is more so along the lines of institutions and companies when I'm traveling. So it's more like I'm booked as a self-made dancer versus an agent booking me. I book
Okay.
myself, which is also, which is not, yeah, like I said, it's just two different worlds.
Okay.
But that's the path that I have chosen. So that was back then.
Okay.
um Now what has changed is well, since the pandemic, I think the word is innovate. A lot of us had to innovate and during the pandemic, because so much has changed. And with teaching a lot of classes on Zoom and teaching a lot of classes online, I got the opportunity to do a lot of international classes. I got to teach kids and people from France to Ghana to London online. So it opened me up to dance education. I began to really research because essential work is in education. So I was able to merge my world and the education world together to really get into that foundation. I'm a foundational dancer already, so I was able to really hone in on that foundation. And once the world started opening back up, I made it my duty to really take on that role. And then I got pregnant in 2021. When I got pregnant in 2021, my world changed completely. I became very sick. I had a condition called hyperemesis gravidarum. It's not morning sickness. It's probably morning sickness times 1,000. It's
Oh wow.
probably, yes. I couldn't even keep down water without medication. I would drink water and I would throw up. So it's very, 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 very rare. It's no one has found a cure for it yet. There are women slowly starting to come out the woodworks with it, but I became very sick. And what happened was I was teaching while I was pregnant. I was teaching a lot of classes while I was pregnant. And I began to, in order to cope with my sickness through my pregnancy, once I announced my pregnancy, because I took a break from social media, once I announced my pregnancy on social media, I began to share more dance videos while pregnant. And the amount of support that I received was amazing. I mean, I received support all the way. I had women sending me money from different countries because being a woman, a Black woman who's bearing a child, I mean, that's just the most magical thing we could do. So I took that and I decided to change my direction, especially once I found that I was giving birth to a girl, and say, I'm going to take this and become an aviator for young Black girls everywhere. So I said, I'm going to do everything that I've always dreamed of doing while I can do it. That's how I got into flying planes. I remember I actually came to my mom's house one day and said, Mom, I flew a plane today. And she was just like, wow, what? And I'm like, yeah. I flew a plane actually like 3 times while I was pregnant. Actually, I had on this shirt in one of my plane videos. But yes, I decided to go to aviation school, learn about flying
Why?
planes. I've always wanted to fly planes. And when I got pregnant, I just was like, I'm going to do everything. I just became so daring. And I said, I'm just going to do it all. So I'm just going to try to learn how to fly planes. And my good friend Tanika, she's a pilot and I had been inspired by her. So when she told me the school she went to, I called the school. They knew Tanika. So I was like, I'm going to go to aviation school and take a few classes, while I'm pregnant over the summer. So that's what I did. I did that and I started flying planes. I didn't really tell anyone except my mom and my child's father. And then I exposed that and, just made it like, you know, one of those things where I don't put myself in a box. I like to see myself as someone who steps out and does many different things. And because of dance as my passport, as the last foundation that I left with you, I was like, I want to learn how to fly planes so I can take myself to a lot of these places and a lot of these. I don't want to limit myself. So that's kind of how I jumped into flying planes. So a dancer slash pilot, you probably will never hear that ever. Like that's like 2 different worlds.
Real talk though, what comes to mind for me is all of those impossible situations where you are in some type of ridiculous plane situation and somebody just needs to step up and fly the fucking plane. What are the chances that that's going to happen, right? But all the planes that you watch, like I feel like one of the movies is actually, I think it's called Plane. It's the one with Gerard Butler
Mm-hmm.
and that black guy. I do not know his name.
Mm-hmm.
But that movie, it's like randomly someone needed to know how to fly a fucking plane. There was
Right.
something else. Like there are a million movies, and I cannot think of a single scenario where I will need to fly a plane. But I think it's pretty fucking badass that you learned how to fly a plane. Like,
Thank
what
you
type
so
of
much.
planes can you fly? Like, I
I
know there are. I'm pretty sure you're not flying a commercial jetliner. Like, that's different than.
I'm flying Skyhawk Cessna. So when
Okay.
I first learned how to fly planes, it was a Skyhawk Cessna. And those are definitely the first planes that you learn to fly when you go to aviation school. So that's how I got into
Mm-hmm.
flying planes with that. It is honestly, it was the most liberating experience. And even after I gave birth, I went back to aviation school to fly some more. And I was
Mm-hmm.
able to actually fly to the Hamptons.
Nice.
So I got to fly over the water because the first time you fly, it's very local, and then the
Okay.
more miles, the more air miles you get, the further you can go. So I went to the Hamptons, and then the last time I flew a plane, a plane, it was I got to land it, which that's very hard. And it was another time that I flew a plane and the wind was very gusty. So, it's very hard.
Okay, so we really should be fly. So, like, what you're saying is we should actually clap for the pilot at the end of the flight.
That's exactly why people do it now. I understand because it is not easy with the turbulence and the gusty winds. Landing a plane, one wrong move, the plane can literally crash and then explode. Like
Yeah, they're
landing
just
a plane
gonna
is
get a
hard.
thank you
It
from me.
seems
I can't
very,
clap,
yeah, it
but no,
seems
I
very,
understand it to be very difficult. I can't do the shit. I ain't never going to be able to do the shit. I'm gonna look to you. If God forbid I was ever on a plane and some shit needed to happen,
right.
it ain't gonna be me that saves the day. Oh wait, I can't hear you.
No, I'm sorry. No, that was an accident. No, I was
Oh,
saying, yeah,
so what else has like changed for you? I know before we started recording, I was saying to you, as a dance instructor, you've played that role as a nurturing or as a mothering, figure for your students prior. Um, I used to teach dance and I know what that's like. I know what that relationship with your babies is.
exactly.
And now as a mother, you've got your own babies. So on
Hmm.
the front end, it's that relationship that you've built with your babies and the way that they are able to perform what you teach and what you give and share with them
Hmm.
has given you the opportunity to expand and grow and develop yourself as a dancer, as a business person,
Right.
and as a traveling performer,
Right.
right? But it's one thing, right, to travel with kids, to just be someone that goes from point A to point B with kids. But then it's another thing to be someone who travels for work and has kids. Like,
Yeah.
how have you been juggling that? Are you able to bring your girls with you? Are you able to, what is it like if you can't bring the girls with you? What has that experience been like for you to navigate?
Oh boy. So the first time I traveled with my daughter was to Atlanta. That wasn't for work. That was for her uncle's baby shower. And actually it wasn't too bad. She was well
Okay.
behaved on the plane. She sat on my lap. She watched her Gracie's Corner on the iPad. She was fine.
Okay.
I had
And
no
what was that
issues.
like for you? Did you have to travel alone, like, or did you have like help with her through the airport? Because I know a lot of, people say that if you, set it up perfectly where your flight is for their nap time and you keep their routines the same, that of
Hmm.
course, routine, right? Routine with
Yes.
kids is what that golden rule is, and it makes everyone's
Yes.
life easier. What
Yes.
was that experience like for you? Because it's one thing to
Yes.
be a new mom, but then it's like another thing to be like a new mom that's now also embarking on the pain in the ass fucking traveling. Did you have
Right.
to do it by yourself? Did you have help? What was that experience like?
So I had help. My mother, my
Excellent.
mom helped me get to the airport with my daughter. My flight was in the afternoon because she's more prone to go to sleep in the middle of the day for her
Hmm.
nap. So she did actually nap on the plane.
Beautiful.
Um, so I did have help with that. Her sister was with me, who's 14, and I
Okay,
did have
good.
people who helped me. They let us get on a plane first,
Hmm.
and I did have good seats. So having good seats does matter. They definitely let you on the plane first if you have children. You get first dibs with that. So that definitely, all those things do help. I will say that it's not as difficult as it may seem unless the child is hysterically crying a lot. And even with that, if the child's hysterically crying, they usually let you off the plane first because no one wants to hear that, right?
Right.
So that was my first experience traveling with my daughter was not too bad. I must say, I was able to put her in the stroller when we got there, when we got back. It wasn't too difficult. Um, Now, when I went to Africa, I did not take my baby. I did take her sister, her
Okay.
who's 14, and traveling with a preteen is a little different because preteens are inquisitive, they're curious, especially when they're somewhere they've never been. So as soon as we got off the plane in Guinea, West Africa, she's wandering into and I'm like, ma'am, no, 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 you have to stay close to me. Like she's just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, the excitement made her just go like that. So this the understanding that you have to explain to your kids, don't wander off, don't walk off. It's going to look beautiful. It's going to look amazing. But trust me, they know that this plane just came from America and we are foreigners and people are crazy.
Hmm.
So I took her sister with me to that, and I mean, I had to explain that to her, but it was also, I think traveling with her was also amazing because she learned a lot. It was an educational experience for her as much as it was a dance education experience for me. So,
Okay.
that's what it was like traveling with both of them at different times for different purposes. And while I was in Guinea, West Africa, I was studying djembe, which is a West African dance style, and that was that allowed me to show my daughter, because it was a hard training for me. It was dance training. It was hard, but she got to see it. She got to, because she thinks I'm just this amazing dancer. But for her to see me on the other side, where I actually had to work and had to push through it, it's like that's inspiring, because that means this is where hard work gets you.
Mm-hmm. So I got like three questions in there for you. Like one about the training, but two about what was her travel experience like? What was that experience like? Because is she the oldest is not your biological daughter,
No,
correct?
no.
So what is that like traveling with someone else's biological child? Like what is that co-parenting travel experience like? Because it's one thing to co-parent with somebody, you know, in the states, in the neighborhood, like, state to state is another headache when you've got one parent that lives in another state. Like, how are we getting minor kids from one place to another? But now we're in a different country.
Hmm.
What was her travel experience? Had she done a lot of traveling before? And then what was that experience like for you now, being the co-parent, the bonus parent with
Right.
somebody else's kid overseas at that?
Okay. So that's a loaded question, and I'm going to answer everything. So the first thing is, she has traveled, not out the country, but she has traveled.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not hard for her to understand how flights work. This was her first international trip, so she had a lot to learn as far as immigration. So she
Okay.
learned a lot as far as immigration, her passport. I was explaining to her the different borders and why this border is necessary, this border is necessary, why they search our bags so many times. Because she did start to ask, why do they search us so much? And I said, when you travel internationally, they have to make sure, they have to be careful. That's why they say 3 hours as opposed to 90 minutes when it's domestic. Now, as far as traveling with someone else's child out the country, that definitely was something that I had to make sure, because I mean, it's one thing if it's my child, but the consequences of something happening when you have someone else's child in your care, no one wants that. So I was extremely protective of her. I mean, to the point where I had the key to her room,
Mm-hmm.
and when it was time to go to bed, I had the key. She couldn't get out. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
extremely protective because I didn't want anything to happen to her. Because if her father is trusting me to take her out of the country to a foreign country, someplace he's never been, him trusting me to that's a lot of trust to
Yeah.
put your child in someone else's hands that did not birth your child. Um, I had to live up to that, and I did not want to disappoint, because that's a lot of trust.
Yeah. What about her mom?
That her mom is not in the picture right now.
Okay. So
So
then moving right past,
yeah.
what is that like? I don't know how to, like, for other people looking in, like you're traveling. For example, when you get to the airport, do they ask, who is this little girl to you? Or do they ask the little girl, like, is this your mom? Or go to your,
Yes.
like, you understand what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like,
Yes, they do.
are people asking questions?
Yes, they
What
are.
is that like?
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Like, because this
Well,
isn't your kid.
she just told them, this is my mom.
Okay.
She didn't hesitate. This is my
Okay.
mom. That's my daughter. And it was
Okay.
as simple as that.
You guys had a more unique situation where that relationship between you guys is already established. So it's not like she's like having to be reiterated or reminded, hey, so be careful about how you talk about our relationship to other people so they don't think that we need to go into a back room and have a conversation about
Exactly.
where I found you if I'm forcing you to be here. Okay, so that great, clear, because that was something that was in the back of my mind. Like, I wonder if that caused any issues. Now, in terms of, traveling with her over there, like, what was that experience like for you guys in terms of bonding and growing your relationship together? Because it's one thing to spend time with someone. And I think any type of intentional time spent with someone, of course, is going to go towards, developing and strengthening a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. But I think that for us as individuals, seeing and experiencing ourselves differently on our travels and in new environments allows us to open ourselves up to opportunities and to, worlds of ourselves that are
Right.
separate from what we currently know.
Right.
And as an imaginative 14-year-old, and as someone that is just like on the cusp and in that space of just like the world and life is so new and everything that they know of life is such a big experience. Like, what was that like to share in that with her in a different country and in not even just like you guys went on a Euro trip, like y'all went to Africa, like
Yeah.
you were in New Guinea.
You were in Guinea, West Africa.
So
We were in
yeah, like
Morocco, in Guinea, and Basu.
okay.
But we spent majority of our time in Guinea.
Okay. So what was that experience like? Because this isn't like, just taking a kid to Disney World, which is
No,
great. It's an impactful experience. It's fucking Disney World. I remember my Disney World trip, right?
I do
But
too.
it's
Yeah.
another thing where this is like, nah, like this isn't something that all of her friends are going to be able to do. This isn't something that like even like all of your cousins could do. Like you could run up to the next barbecue and be like, but guess what I did last summer? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like what was that like for you guys?
Well, Guinea was a learning experience for both of us, and we got to. It actually brought us closer together because she went through some growing pains while being in Africa.
What
Seeing
was
the
that?
young black girls out there, the young black children in Africa are much more mature, much more responsible, much more organized, less nonsense. As we're here, it's a lot of irresponsibility, unfortunately, especially in our community with children. And she was a little culture shocked when she saw that the scooter taxis were driven by boys her age. And
Hmm.
they were making so much money. And she's just like, the teen girls, they have jobs. They're responsible. They don't have time to just be all in their phones, and everything is not a TikTok video and things like that. Like, she had to learn that this is what we aspire for our children to be like, because this is what our ancestors grew up on: responsibility, diligence. So for her, she realized that, she said we play around a lot back in America, because here they don't play around at all. Like, so she learned
Hmm.
a lot of valuable lessons and responsibility and being aware and paying attention. She and I even had some moments where I had to hold her accountable as a mother figure. And we had to hit that rough patch, and I had to sit her down and be like, listen, this is what we're not going to do. This is what we are going to do, because she is 14, and they
Yeah,
get pushback. That is just natural. But it wasn't in
absolutely.
a disrespectful way. It was just, she gave a little pushback, but that was because her she got, her defense was up. Because
Hmm.
at that age, you're very defensive, you're very sensitive, you feel like you're being attacked, so your knee jerk reaction is to respond with defense. So I had to check her on that. And she instantly apologized and said, you mean everything to me, and I appreciate everything you've done for me and do for me. Like, I would never be ungrateful to you. I'm sorry. I just get really defensive. And I said, the fact that you recognize that now
Hmm.
means now you can fix it, because that's really all it is you're being defensive because there's something sensitive and insecure within you that you gotta acknowledge. And I said, you're 14. You're
Yep.
not going
She's a
to,
baby.
your baby, you're not going to get that right away. It's going to
All
be
of the hormones are new. The hormones don't even know what they're
right.
there to do yet.
And
So
even
she's going
down
to have some time working through them.
even
She'll
down
get
to
there.
her even down to her body. She's a very developed young lady, and she's recognizing, like, oh, like, I get looked at, and this is, she dresses like this, but out there it's really, really hot, so she had on more fitted shirts and was just like, oh, I okay, like, so it was a lot for her to take in.
Hmm.
She did a lot of quiet, and I have never seen that girl so quiet.
Mm.
She was very quiet on that trip and watching a lot of what's going on.
Now,
So
how did she respond to the different countries? Because the all the countries are different
she
over
loved
there.
it.
Like they're
She
not.
she respected it.
Mhm.
She respected all the cultural differences from Morocco to Guinea. She respected all the cultural differences. If anything, she wanted to be a part of it. She wanted to wear the hijab. She wanted to wear the things to show the people of the country, like, I respect your culture.
Mhm.
So yeah, she loved it.
So you had mentioned earlier that her being able to see you on the other side of being a dancer, being a student as a dancer. What was that like for you, being back as a student, and also back in a much more authentic setting than you could get in a different country? Because it's one thing to have like an instructor come from, it's one, well, first of all, it's one thing to have an instructor that's trained in a specific technicality or a specific type of dance or a style of dance. But then it's
Right.
another thing to have, an instructor who comes from an area where the style of dance is richly influenced by where the dance is done. And then
Exactly.
it's a different thing to then now take class in this location in a style of dance that is very heavily influenced on, that is partly dependent based, it's not dependent, but it's heavily influenced by where it's from. So it's like there are different tiers and there are different levels. What was that next level
Oh my
experience like for
goodness.
you?
Well, first of all, the studio space. It wasn't even well, the dance space. I won't even say studio space, the
Hmm.
dance space. First of all, it wasn't even class. They put me in rehearsal with a dance company. So
Okay.
that was already one because I'm
High
dancing with
expectations.
pros. I'm dancing with the pros. And I got my ass, can I say ass?
Absolutely, girl.
I got my ass handed to me. Um Okay, it was, well, walking into this dance space, I felt the energy of my ancestors. They haven't updated that dance space. You could tell that it is, they kept it exactly the way it was made.
Hmm.
So that was beautiful to see. It was also beautiful to be around. No one speaks English in Guinea. Everyone speaks French.
Okay.
So my instructor only spoke French. I was the
Do
only
you
one
speak
in
any
there.
French?
Huh?
Do you speak
Guinea.
any French?
Comme si, comme ça. Very
Okay.
little. So not a lot. And she was speaking, and I was just like, oh my, and the instructor spoke no English. So our language that we shared was dance. So I had to really pay attention to
Mm.
how she was moving. Um, and the music, and it was 2 hours, no AC because they don't have that, no fans because they don't have that. And everyone is just the children and the dancers, they were so disciplined. It was just, I was like, oh my goodness. I thought I was good here, but when I went there, I said, no, this is different. I got
Yeah.
my ass handed to me, but in a way that I needed. Sometimes life just gotta humble you so that you can shut up and learn. And I
Hmm.
needed that moment so that I could shut up and learn.
Yeah. One of the things that hit me so hard was in Cuba. I feel like have you been to Cuba?
I have not. Costa
Okay.
Rica. Yeah.
So in Cuba, I went to Palenque, which is a village that was established by escaped slaves, and they have very strictly held that bloodline strong, that you are there because you are a descendant of those slaves that were able, those enslaved people who were able to escape and create a life there. First of all, them babies was dancing their asses off, okay?
Yes.
And they were drumming their asses off. But
Yeah.
my God, because I've been there, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
danced, but I've never danced in that heat,
Okay.
that consistently, and that strongly.
Yes.
That is some next level technique. Like, it
Yes.
is one thing to just be able to keep going, to have high endurance, and to just keep your body moving, but then to just do it with a smile, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, that's one stage, that's one level. You're there, you're there. But then to do that, baby, in like 102 degrees, full humidity, like, what? I'm so like,
And then
respect
day
where
of
respect
training,
is due.
my second day of training, she came to my house and we practiced outside in the sun at 1 o'clock in the afternoon,
Oh,
at the
that was
peak of the
crazy.
sun.
Terrible
That
idea.
was crazy.
I
But
don't want to walk to the store 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
they do that out there. So they do that out there. They
So
do
how
that.
did you not die? What was your? It's no, seriously though, because heat stroke's a real thing. Heat exhaustion and dehydration are real things, and
I
so I can
don't know.
imagine
I
that
don't know why
even
I didn't die. That's a good question. I think the
because that
sun in
matters.
Africa is different because I didn't die. I didn't. The air is different. The sun is different. I also was very well fed before I went on because I had a cook at my house and she made
Okay,
me a hearty breakfast that helped. And they had lots of water there, and I was very hydrated. And I was completely well fed before I went out there. So I don't know how I didn't die. I really don't know.
because I
I,
think that
I
that's
survived.
something that I'm certain that Olympians and other athletes at like high levels consider, like, especially when you do outdoor sports. But dance
Mhm.
isn't necessarily conceived as an outdoor sport per se. You know what I mean? Like
And it
I think
should
of it
be.
as a
And it should be.
as a sport. But in terms of it being outdoors, I don't necessarily. I mean, yes, there are tons of performances that are done outdoors, but when I think of dance, I'm thinking of indoors. I'm thinking of inside. The outdoor performances, something that happens, but not like the norm that you think of.
Mm-mm.
But I didn't consider what that's another layer to consider is the way that you also have to treat your body, have to again, I hate using the same words again, but like you have to consider your body is now performing at a different requirement, at a different level, and between the heat, just like the something as simple as one thing I used to always pay attention to was what's the space we working in? Like how much space do I have? That's one thing that I always hated was like dancing in smaller spaces
Mm-hmm.
because it's like you have your full out in your head. Your body knows what your full out is. And your full out is one thing when it's just like, all right, so well, this is the staggering, this is the lining, this is the setup of who we have around me. So you know what your full out is going to look like with the people that are around you. But then it's just like now if these people got to be 3 feet closer to me, my full out is different. So it's like those types of considerations you think of. But like I don't know that I would have as readily considered that you might have to train for something like this differently than you
Exactly.
would normally train. This is something that when they say like you're going to go hike Mount Kilimanjaro or something like that, like
Right.
altitude training where they prepare you for you might want to do a certain type of workout, or you might want to do some types of pre-training or preconditioning so that your body is able to complete or achieve whatever it is that you set out for. But is that one of the things that in your especially in your specialty as um I guess dance education and like not as a commercial dancer, but someone who travels based on the education they're receiving in their dance experience? Has that ever been something that the different institutions or companies have ever mentioned or stressed? That because I mean, you are expected to be at the peak of your personal performance level, right? But
Right.
then it's a different thing when they don't necessarily say to you, hey girl, so we're doing it outside in 100 degrees, or London having to perform in some place that may not necessarily be as warm as what you're used to if you're say from Miami or Augusta, Georgia, or something like that. Has that ever come as a point of consideration or conversation from any of those establishments?
Well, no, I know for me, whatever is handed to me, I usually tend to, excuse me, I'm just moving a little bit. I know that for me, I tend to just do what I need to do,
Hmm.
no matter the condition. I'm not really one to complain.
Hmm.
So if they tell me we're dancing outside, we're dancing in the cold, and I know that it's something that I genuinely want to do, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to genuinely do it because it's something that I truly want to do. So I try to leave no room for excuses.
So what was it like when you returned home? Like how has your experience been able to what has been, I don't want to say like the fallout, but what has been the aftermath? Like, what has been like all the words that are coming to me have such like a negative connotation, but like, what has your experience been like with your eldest now that you've been back, and what has it looked like in how you're able to now offer your students back at home now that you've had this, continued education and further development for yourself as an educator?
Well, what has changed about, well, the aftermath of my daughter and I, my oldest, is I have learned to spend less time trying to do things for her and do more things with her as far as mental and character building versus just going out.
Okay.
Because over the summer I took her to see Beyonce, and then I took her to Africa, and that was her first concert, and this was her first time out the country, so I raised the bar kind of high in both
Mm-hmm.
areas. And I learned that learning some of the challenges she has as far as her character development, excuse me, I was like, I'm going to use this time now to help develop your mindset and your character versus always just wanting to take you out and do things with you. That bonding is important,
Mm-hmm.
but we need
Okay.
a lot more mental bonding. And being in Africa made me realize we need a lot more mental bonding, because it was strong, but I learned some things about her that I would have never had known had I not went to Africa. And I said, this is going to change our dynamic in a good way, because now I'm going to focus more on helping your character development as a young lady and as a young girl. And she was able to open more about the things that she has gone through in her past. So that changed that. And ultimately, that also helped bring her grades up at school. So, just different things that she's realizing, okay, I got to do better. So that's how that helped with her. And on my end, it just made me really pay attention to her more. Her needs, not her wants. That's important. Now, as far as my kids, I changed the whole dynamic of my babies' dance. So I have teach a few different groups, and I have my babies, which is called the Creative Movement. At first, they were doing a shuffle piece, a tap shuffle piece. I changed that whole dynamic. They're dancing now with the drums. They have their own little djembe drums, and they're understanding, because how I teach dance with the babies is I use tap shoes to help them understand that if the tap shoes sound like they're all over the place, they're not dancing together.
That's right.
So that one sound, I'm like, does it sound like one sound? They're like, no. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make it sound like one sound. But now I'm using that with the drums. So I let them hit the drums and hit the beat, and they're like this with the little djembe drums. So me taking the djembe drum and teaching them that is from Guinea, West Africa, was something that was true to my heart, because it was like, okay, I was a student here, and now I get to take this and bring this to these little babies, and they get to go home and tell their mom, mommy, I did a drum dance today from Gimme, because they're kids, so Gimme West Africa, or Gimme Africa, or Africa Gimme. It just to see the excitement behind them learning about that dance versus just, how we grew up. We grew up learning African dance, but we didn't really get the indulgement of it, because and you have to really go to Africa to get that different type of training. You really do. So a lot of times we just learn boom, ba, ba, do, do, do. We learned it, and it was good. Like, it was great. Like, your mom was great. Like, it was great. But being able to tell them where it came from, and the drums, and why the drums exist, and what the rhythms mean, I was able to really teach. I was really able to sit down and teach them like they were in a African history class or African class. This is what you're learning, and this is why you're doing it. Like, I have a little whiteboard of what they're learning, and they read off of it before we dance. So it allowed me to go deeper beyond the surface with teaching dance. Mm-hmm. And that is something that that's one of the reasons why I went to Guinea. I said, if I'm going to teach African dance, I need to go to Africa. I'm very big on authenticity. I do not believe in the blind leading the blind. It's too much of that, especially today in the dance world. So many people that teach that I'm like, if you just had a little more training, you could teach. But you have to really, really, and if you can't go to Africa because it's expensive, then read. There's so many YouTube videos. There's so much research, or train with someone who went to Africa. Some people do that as well. There's so many ways for us to really get that true information beyond the surface. And the drummers were telling me that I am the first dancer of my generation to go back to Africa and train in djembe since, rest her soul, Alexandria Myers. That's not African. Anyone who's African, of course, they go back home, but non-African dance teacher that actually went to Africa to learn. No other dance teacher in our Queens community has done that.
Okay.
As far as they know, and they go to Africa every year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the teachers now, of course, they learn from the OGs, but they never went back home because, again, it's
Now, are there
expensive.
different schools that are out there? Like, what is that world look like in Western Africa, at least in the area in Guinea that you were in?
There are different companies, so many
Okay.
different companies. They have so many dance festivals. So there are lots of different ones. I was in Conakry. So I went to North Conakry for
Mm-hmm.
my training. But there's so many different dance spaces in Guinea itself, even in
Okay.
Conakry itself. I was specifically in Matam, Conakry, which is that's the area where I was training at.
And do they have like not apprenticeships, but like what is the type of program that you were in to go over and do this? Like if there were other dancers that were interested in having an experience, well, a more immersive experience where they themselves wanted to have firsthand training or not even just training for the experience, like other dancers that just want to study under someone, well, not just even someone, but more authentically, what would you suggest, or what resources would you direct people to kind of find what studio or what company may work best for them, or even to know the type of dance or even region that they would like to focus their attention to kind of immerse themselves in?
I would honestly say to do your research because for me, I got to Matam Conakry with Aminata, the choreographer, through a drummer named Gene Osborne, he's been going to Conakry every year for 30 years.
Okay.
He's pretty famous out there in Guinea. He's not Guinean himself, but he might as well be because the world knows him. He has been watching me for some time now. He's always been a fan of my will to move. And when he saw that I did a couple of things African based, he reached out to me and said, "You got to go to Africa, Jazz. We go every year. You got to come with us this year. You got to come. You got to go to Africa. Like, what are you doing? Like, you got to go." He said, "I say to so many dancers." He said, you gotta go. Like, let's go. So I said, I'm going. And I was ready. So I would say, if people wanted to go through me, I would send them to Gene.
Okay.
Gene has his people that he could set things up with. Everything is a fee, of course, it costs money, but I would
Mm-hmm.
send them to Gene. There were other women in my rehearsal from Paris, France, as well.
Mm-hmm.
They did their research, and that's how they found Aminata. They were French women who they lived in Conakry. When I was talking to them, the little bit English they did have, they told me they lived in Conakry for 3 months, but they're going back to France next month. But they came here to Conakry to train.
Okay.
So, I would say do your research. And I think it's also about word of mouth because the internet out there is not really a huge thing. It's still very old school. So it's really who you know. And it's really word of mouth. Like one of the women from France, she's dating a Guinean man.
Okay.
So when I guess when she came with him the first time, she discovered the company and then went back since she happened to be a dancer and brought her dancer friends and said, "Let's go to Guinea." So it's really right now it's word of mouth, but Guinea is starting to become modernized. They are, and I say in about 5-6 years, Guinea is going to be pretty modernized. The internet's going to be up and running. They're already rebuilding the homes and making them look more modernized.
Okay. So before we finish up, what was that experience like in Guinea in particular? Like you said in the Conakry area, so there was no access to internet. Like what was
It was
your,
scarce.
okay.
The internet is scarce. It's very hard to get internet service and Wi-Fi. Like, it's very slow. It's extreme. It exists. It's slow. It's almost like when the internet was first created in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the beginning stages. Women, people are still washing up and taking showers in buckets in Conakry, which was beautiful to see. Honestly, that was beautiful to see. I've been seeing the kids just in front of the house, just taking a bath, and it was, no one cared. It was just very normal to seeing the big brothers washing the little brothers in the bucket, giving them washing the. I see the little girl, 5 years old, washing her baby sister's hair, and another one braiding her sister's hair. It was just beautiful to see how resourceful they were, and they were so happy. They didn't even need. I saw a bunch of boys near my house. Three of them were herding goats. Another few of them were just jumping in and out of the canal river, and another group playing soccer. A group of boys, just, they don't need internet, they don't need anything. They were just enjoying outside, they were enjoying nature, and they were happy, and everyone was happy.
What were your accommodations like?
I lived in a house in Concrete. I lived in a more modernized house. So one of the modern homes that were being built, I lived in one of those homes.
Okay, so the running water, flushing toilet.
Yes.
You said you had a cook, so I assume, like, there's a stove, there's a sink,
No,
there's
she
like,
cooked outside.
really? Okay.
There's no, yeah. So in Africa, they still keep some traditions. Her name was Fudia. Fudia cooked everything outside. Everything was, and honestly, it tastes amazing. No stove. She cooked everything outside. All she had was charcoal and fire. She cooked everything outside.
That is an interesting setup. That's nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what would you leave baby dancers with as we close this out? Like, what is something that, because when we last spoke, you had dance as your passport, right? Like, what is your closing remark for this conversation? Like, what are you imparting upon the future generation of traveling dancers?
Be an aviator at everything that you do. And when I say aviator, I mean taking things to new heights and taking things to new levels. So that's why I call myself a dance aviator, because I am taking what I do to a new level and to a new height that people usually see and go, how the heck are you doing this? Shock the world with what you're doing, make them believe what you're doing. I always say, I'm going to just use her as an example. Look at Beyonce. She's a perfect example of an aviator. She never comes back the way she left. She comes back different every single time you see her. Every single time. And that's my goal, is every time I come back into the light, I'm going to be a different version of myself. And aviator to me just means I'm going to forever evolve. It's going to be turbulence. It's going to be ups and downs. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to always evolve. So that's what I would leave with. Dance is my passport is definitely still my saying, but we've evolved from that, because I've evolved from that, and I've humbled myself so much since then.
Jasmine, thank you so, so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing in your experiences. Every week we have really great conversations about how travel is so much more than vacation. And thank you for discussing with us how it has, helped you grow as not just a teacher, but as a mother. And
Yes.
I appreciate you sharing that story with us. And I can't wait to keep up with you and see how you continue to aviate and grow and
Thank
improve
you.
and develop more and more. All right,
Yes.
y'all. Thanks for rocking with us. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you guys next week.
See
Oh, wait,
you.
actually, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Jasmine Noir, JASMINE, .NOIR_. Sorry, I had to open the door for my daughter. My little toddler. She's about to come in the room.
So, it'll be in the description box, but you said Jasmine.Noir.
Yes, _ Jasmine.Noir _
Okay, underscore at the end. All right, good folks. See y'all next week. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.